All right. Morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this BEAD deployment program webinar. My name is Paul Witherspoon. I'm the Chief of Broadband Funding for the Office of Broadband within the Division of Community Development. Our office is excited for the opportunity to give you a walkthrough of the BEAD deployment application and discuss how to apply for the BEAD deployment funding to bring 100% broadband connectivity to the remaining 117,000 unserved and underserved areas in Florida. A couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat feature and we'll address questions as we move through the application. This presentation will be recorded and we will have the recording posted within the next 2 business days. The first BEAD Deployment Program Technical Assistance Webinar took place on July 8th, 2025, as an overview of the Florida BEAD Deployment Program and next steps for potential applicants to prepare for the application launch. In the presentation, we gave an overview of the Florida Commerce Office of Broadband and discussed the BEAD deployment program, the BEAD restructuring policy notice, the eligible project areas, locations, and technology considerations, the pre-registration portal, and tips before you apply. On this slide, we've included a BEAD deployment timeline. Our office posted project areas and eligible locations on July 8th, 2025. A revised list of eligible locations was posted July 14th, 2025 to remove about 1,800 RDOF locations inadvertently included in the previous list. This did not alter the project areas. Please use the BEAD eligible locations list created by the office when creating your application. The Office of Broadband plans to open the application cycle for this BEAD deployment program late afternoon today, July 14th. The Office of Broadband intends to close the application cycle for the BEAD deployment program on August 4th, 2025 at 5 p.m. The office intends to close this application cycle, The final proposal for the BEAD program is due to the National Telecommunications and Information Association September 4th of 2025. Provisional awards will be announced when the office submits its final proposal. Additionally, all projects for this program must be completed within 4 years of final proposal approval. On this slide are suggestions to focus on prior to applying for the BEAD deployment program. All applicants must pre-register within the Florida Commerce Portal prior to applying. If you have not done so already, we have included the link on the slide deck. Applicants must submit separate applications for each project area they're interested in receiving an award for detailing the broadband serviceable locations they plan to serve and any outliers or exclusions. We'll use this information in the negotiation round if no applications were received for those locations. Applicants will be required to include the cost per location in each application. Connect with your respective local technology planning team about your potential application. The LTPT can offer valuable insights, provide letters of recommendation, and review applications for a more comprehensive submission. Florida Commerce strongly recommends that potential applicants team up with other providers to cover all project areas and locations within a single application, creating a more advantageous proposal. Prepare your documents. Applicants will be required to provide all of the following attachments to their application: a project financials workbook, community support letters, project matching funds, project schedule, technology attachments, network design, National Environmental Policy Act plan, cybersecurity risk management plan, supply chain risk management compliance, ownership information, project area service BSLs, project area outlier BSLs, project area excluded BSLs, network performance roadmap workbook, financial statements and audit reports, and a letter of credit or performance bond commitment letter. On this page, we've provided helpful resource links that our potential applicants can use when completing the application. Please note, we'll include these links in the chat feature as I quickly discuss each link. We have included our Office of Broadband official website that navigates our multiple programs. We have included the pre-registration portal link for all interested applicants. As stated earlier, applicants must pre-register before they apply. Additionally, our office has created a BEAD deployment landing page. This page is essential to potential applicants because it houses our project areas and interactive map, eligible locations data, program guidelines, application templates, and frequently asked questions. As mentioned, the BEAD deployment landing page houses the project areas, and we included a direct link to it as well as the interactive map. Our last link is to our office hours. We encourage providers to join every Tuesday and Thursday should they have questions. Now I'll pass this along to Madison for an application walkthrough within the SARA system. Madison?
Great, thanks, Paul. So I'm going to pull up my screen. And we'll start our walkthrough. So this is the landing page that should be linked in the links provided. For those that have pre-registered, you'll click on the left here to log in. You'll use your login credentials that have been provided. And this will take you to the grant portal page. You'll select the BEAD deployment program option here on the right. And you'll note the dates, July 4th, opening today. And you'll be taken to this landing page. Here, there's a couple pieces of information that you'll definitely want to read through around eligibility, maximizing your chances, and some of the information that we just talked through related to the application window, the office hours, but you'll scroll down here and select Apply Now. So now I'm in the application, and I have just a few notes on functionality and navigating the application before we actually go through the questions themselves. So you'll see here on the left side, there's a panel for navigating between the different sections. So you're able to select a section and navigate to that section using that panel. There's 7 different sections, as well as an appendix at the end that lists all the attachments. When completing a section, you'll be required to complete any fields that are marked with a red asterisk, so as required, before you're able to save and move on to the next section. There's no automatic saving of responses within a section. You'll need to click Save in order to save, and you'll need to complete all the required responses before you can save. So for example, if I go to click Save here, I haven't completed the acknowledgement, so I'm not able to do that. Once I do click that and I click Save, it then shows that I've saved, I've moved to the next section. And you'll note here, there's a green check mark showing that I've completed that section and it's been saved. So going back to section 1, here is some key information to read through around how to submit your application, what we'll be looking for in the response, as well as a disclaimer around some supporting documentation that will need to be read through. One of the key things here is noting that before you start the application, you'll want to read through the complete program guidance, which has also been posted today. It's intended that this application is completed along with that guidance document. And that will provide guidance around how to complete some of the responses in this application. So please make sure that you're reviewing that guidance document and using it as you complete your application. And here, this page is the acknowledgement. You'll look to acknowledge this and then move to the next section. We'll move on to section 2, which is applicant information. Here, this should pull information from your registration. So majority of the fields here in entity information are going to be pre-populated. If they are not pre-populated and they are required, please go ahead and fill those in. If anything in here is being pre-populated and is incorrect, please go ahead and correct it or contact the office if you're not able to update it. As part of entity information, you'll be able to also identify whether your entity is a consortium. In the case of this application, we're referring to consortium as a multi-entity or a partnership between two entities that have come together to submit an application for this program, but may not have, a formal joint organizational structure. And based on this, if you select yes, there'll be additional questions related to each of the entity members, as well as some narratives around the partnership. Next section here is contact information. Again, pulling some of these fields from your registration. So some of this should be pre-populated already. If it's a required field and not pre-populated, please go ahead and fill that out. Additionally, we are requiring a second contact as well as a primary contact. And then the final section within section 2 is ownership information. So here there's a narrative response. Depending on your entity type, we ask that you provide different pieces of information. So please refer to the guidance document when completing this narrative to make sure you include all the required elements. And then there'll be a required upload for ownership information as well to support your narrative as well. And any of the consortium members, they'll each need to provide that information here as well. Go on to the next section, which is section 3, application summary. This one is fairly straightforward. You'll provide an application title. So that's, the title that you're naming this project that you're proposing. And this is primarily so that we can identify if someone's submitting multiple applications. We can have identifiers for each. And then we'll also ask for a high-level summary of your proposed project. We'll ask that you provide a high-level description, including technology type, your approach, timeline, and anything that makes your project uniquely positioned to provide service to the proposed project area. The project area information section is next. As you're completing this section, it's really important to understand that within a project area, each one of the serviceable locations or BSLs should be classified in one of these 3 categories, which is locations to be served. Those are the BSLs you're proposing to serve as part of your project. Outlier locations. These are the locations with excessively high cost. They are not part of your project application or part of your overall project budget, but you will provide a cost to serve these, and they may be included as part of negotiations. And then the third category is excluded locations. These are BSLs within the project area you are not proposing to serve and will not provide a cost for. So with that understanding, you'll go through to here and select which of the project areas you're proposing to serve with this project. You'll confirm your selection, and then that will provide the project area ID and the number of serviceable locations as well as the county. You'll next go here and select whether it is a single technology project or a mixed technology project. A single technology project is one with just one type of technology. A mixed technology is one with multiple types of technology. So that may be, for example, a fiber and fixed wireless project that's both technology proposed as part of one project application. You'll next come down here to the BSL information section. The locations to be served is a required section. And the map of the project areas and BSLs is linked here for your use, but was also provided previously. You'll put your total count of BSLs to be served, as well as the average subsidy amount per BSL, and that's the total project cost minus the proposed match divided by the number of BSLs you're proposing to serve. And this is a required upload. There's a template to complete here for the BSLs that you're proposing to serve. So you'll download this template, complete it, and upload the file. Similarly, if you're proposing outlier locations and excluded locations, you'll select yes, and then you'll also be asked to enter the count and upload the template. Same thing with excluded locations, yes, and upload, enter the count, upload the template. And I will note that the count of locations between excluded, outlier, and locations to be served should all total this locations to be served number, so that all BSLs within the project area have been accounted for in one of those three categories. The next section within project area information is related to technology type. So here you'll select whether you would like your application to be assessed as a priority broadband project or not. The definition of priority broadband project and non-priority broadband project are listed here. You may select yes or no for this, but the office will review the applications and make the determination of whether the project is a priority broadband project or not. And then you'll be asked to provide information around the technology that you're proposing for your project. There is both a narrative response here around the technology, and then you'll also select the technology types that you're proposing. So for example, fiber and fixed wireless, if I'm doing a mixed technology project. And then for each technology type selected, there will be a template to download and then upload, and there'll be the technology questions related to each technology type in these templates. We'll go on to the next section, which is project details. This one has quite, I would say this one has the most number of sections within the subsection. So just be aware of that as you're setting out to complete it. The first one is the permitting and barriers. So here we're looking for both acknowledgement around the due diligence required, identifying required permits, as well as any identified barriers and plans for mitigation related to those. Similarly, for the Environmental and Historic Preservation Act, we would look for you to provide a narrative around the site and surrounding area and your plans for implementation that include your planned approach for complying with NEPA and NHPA. You may provide a NEPA plan as part of this application, but it's not required. This is an optional attachment. Next is network information. So this is where you'll provide your high-level network design. I will note, please refer to the guidelines that provide some specific information about what is to be included with your network design. And then this file will be uploaded here. It's simply a file upload, as well as 2 confirmations around involving the use of conduit access points and understanding that you'll use a professional engineer prior to grant agreement. The next section is network performance plan. So this is another one with a template that can be downloaded, completed, and then re-uploaded. And this is around the network performance over the next 10 years. And then we have a section here around network upgrades. These are, for the most part, narrative responses here directly in the application. And similarly about reliability and resilience, there are direct narrative questions with fields that you'll enter directly in the application here. There's a section for the low-cost broadband service option. Here you will acknowledge this requirement and again refer to the guidance and the guidelines for the full requirements for this service option, but you'll acknowledge that this is required. Project readiness, this is where you'll provide your project schedule. So both entering the number of months from notice of award that you'll begin providing service, and then you'll download this project schedule template, complete it, and then upload the file here. And then finally, local technology planning teams. Here you'll provide a description of your interactions with these teams, and then you'll have the option to provide supporting documents if you'd like, but they're not required. The next section is project finances. So here is where you'll provide information around the project cost. So here it's you'll enter in the project cost, the grant amount requested or subsidy amount, the total match amount, and the match percentage. You'll be asked to provide evidence of your matching funds commitment, and also detail the match type, whether that's cash, loans, or in-kind match. If you are proposing or requesting a match waiver, which is conditional and it must be approved by the office, but if you are selecting that, you can select here, and then additional information will pop up and additional questions should you be going the route of requesting a waiver. The financial statements and letter of credit or performance bond commitment is next. The financial statements and the letter of credit or performance bond commitment are required uploads. The single audit report is optional. If applicable, please provide it. The next section is the pro forma financial statements. So this is another one with a workbook that can be downloaded, completed, and then uploaded. I will note that for this workbook, much of the instructions and definitions for how to complete the workbook are found within the workbook itself in some of the tabs. So please make sure you're reviewing all of the tabs within that workbook as you're completing it. And then we'll also have a narrative response that goes along with the pro forma. And then finally, there's a section on project viability and sustainability, which has some narrative responses directly in the application here. The final section is section 7 for certification and acknowledgements. So again, this is another section I'll note that please review the guidance and guidelines along with these certifications. There's one for Build America, Buy America, Cybersecurity Risk Management Plan, and Supply Chain Risk Management Plans. These are optional to provide now. You may provide it now, or you may provide it prior to signing a grant agreement. And then there's additional certifications related to the program here. The full text is within the application or the guidance document itself for the acknowledgements. And by clicking here, you're acknowledging that you have reviewed those and agree to comply. And then finally, the appendix section will list all of the different attachments that are required. So kind of compiling all those attachments from all the other sections included there in the appendix as a reference for you. So with that, I can keep my screen open if that's helpful, or Paul, I can hand it back to you for the questions.
Thanks, Madison. Going through a couple of these questions on the side here. Give us a minute or so, and then we'll come back with some responses for you. See, one of the most important questions that's in there is if there are previous awarded locations showing as ineligible for funding BSL, should we call that an outlier? No, please call that an exclusion and note the reason for it. The reason that we posted a new list late last night, early this morning, was that we identified some duplicative locations from the federal commitment list through RDOF and our BEAD eligibility list. We removed about 1,812 locations that were included on both lists. So Instead of the original 118,000 or so, we're down to 117,000. So if there are any that are included in a grant that you already have, or service that you already know exists, or a federal commitment such as RDOF or Enhanced ECAM, ACAM, then please exclude those locations and list the reason why in your excluded template. Thank you. Another questions. Are there questions with red dots need to be answered or optional? Just heard some of these questions are optional. Then they have red dots next to the questions. So if they're red dotted, they're a required response. I'll go through a couple of these other questions that have been asked during the during the presentation. Will the recording be available? And if so, how would I access it? The recording will be available within 2 business days on our Office of Broadband website. Are there any word or character limits? The majority of those character limits are 10,000. There are some locations within the application that have other limitations. For instance, the number of months to deploy is limited to 48 because we have a 4-year time limit on this. But where they're restricted, they're identified in the application. Is there a chance Florida will ask for an extension from the NTIA like Texas did? So at this point in time, we have no intention of asking for an extension. We'll see where we are once we complete this round 1 of the application process. We need to complete 100% of the unserved and underserved locations. If we don't reach that point, we'll discuss with the NTIA what we need to do to move forward. Can you clarify the difference between an excluded and an outlier? Our outlier are included in the project. So outliers would be a high cost location that you would be willing to serve, but because the cost is prohibitive at this point in time and would affect your overall BSL cost, then just identify those locations and the cost per location. And if we don't get an application that includes those when we get to the negotiation round, we'll look at your application to ask if you would be willing to serve those locations that you had originally called outliers. Again, that's only if there's no applicant that identified those particular locations in their applications. The excluded locations would be those that you don't care to serve at all ever, or if they are already served under a federal commitment or a state commitment, please identify in your excluded list those locations and the reason for that. And again, this relates back to none of these lists are perfect, right? They move every day. The goalposts move every day. There are literally hundreds of people coming online with private investment every day. The lists are not perfect to begin with. There's new locations being built. So we ask you to please use our list instead of any other list when you create your project areas. And if there are locations that you find that you consider to be already served or already under a commitment, please exclude those areas by Fabric ID and let us know the reason why. Again, there was a question on where do we find the guidance document or the technology template. Those are all on the web page under the BEAD program deployment for the Florida Office of Broadband. On the right-hand side towards the bottom are all the templates that we require you to use. If there's no template highlighted there that has one already created for you, then you can create whatever you'd like to. Another question, is there a revised polygon post for RDOF removal? So the service areas didn't change. The project areas remain the same. The underlying locations within those service areas, some of them may have changed. I think the largest change was about a 25% reduction to one of those service areas. The rest of them are down less than 10% or so. So the project areas remain as they were. The locations within those may have been reduced. And who can complete the data entry in the portal? Only the primary contact. When originally pre-registered, there was an option to include a consultant. How do we get access for our consultant to complete data entry? Your registration is based upon entity. So if the company is associated with any other users, whether it's a primary, a secondary, or consultant, within that entity, you can register other people to access that application at the same time as you do. So multiple people can work on an application at the same time, but it's all under the same entity. Don't register individuals because we won't approve them, just the company. And then within the company, you will have the opportunity to add users, whether they're a consultant or a part of your company. Should all applicants have Florida state tax IDs? For instance, some applicants may not be operating in Florida, but look to do so through the BEAD program. So in order to participate in our program, before you have an agreement, you'll have to register as a vendor for the state to do business in the state of Florida. You can do that through sunbiz.org, and you won't be able to get an agreement unless you have an account set up with them so that we can make sure that we can make the payments with the Florida vendor ID. I don't see any additional questions in here, so we'll give it a couple of minutes. If you can think of a question, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll be happy to answer it for you. Also, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesdays from 10:30 to 11:30, Thursdays from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We hold business hours. We're on there for the full hour. You can come and go as you please. You can come and listen to some of the other questions, or you can come on and ask a question, get your answer, and go home. Is there a master list of location IDs that can be downloaded? All of the CSVs for the locations are located on our website. Is there an option to submit any attachments that aren't required? For example, if a provider wants to provide supplemental information regarding a certification, are they allowed to do so? Yes, you should be able to upload any other additional attachments that you'd like. At this point, all required templates have been posted. Correct. All the required templates are listed in that list on our webpage. The only ones that are required to be used in that format are the ones that are highlighted. All of the templates are required, but specific format for those that have been highlighted as those that are required to be used, that our template is to be used. Where can we find information on the required letter of credit or performance bond? That's also in the guidelines that are on our webpage. Network design, what is acceptable? We have to be able to identify what you're going to be deploying, whether it's fiber or fixed wireless or satellite, along with the equipment that you'll be using, whether it's the latest pond system or a DOCSIS or a version of satellite so that we can calculate what the speed and capabilities are for future use. So you want to have the best engineering design that you possibly can with all the equipment listed and the distances, the mileage for your fiber cable, the distances between towers, all of that type of information. The next question is, can we include 20% serviced VSLs in the application also? Not sure what you mean by that question, so if you can clarify it in the chat, I'll be happy to answer it for you. Following up on my question, so a company that is registered with Florida's, I'm not sure what SO is, but I think it's probably DOS, Department of State. It must also get a Florida tax ID to apply. Not a Florida tax ID, a Florida vendor number. And you'll get that Florida vendor number once we start doing business with you. And then that network design, I guess the acceptable is what file type? KML, KMZ, GeoSpawn. Can you submit multiple projects in a project area? If so, do they have to mutually exclusive, no overlapping locations? So one application for a project area and one alone, unless you want to do a variety of technologies or you want to exclude some locations. So if you choose to do an application for project area A, and the first one that you submit is 100% that's done by fiber, and you wanted to do a half and half or a hybrid, you would submit a separate application for that. If you wanted to remove some of the locations, then you would submit a separate application showing I'm going to do 50% of these, 20% are going to be excluded, and 30% are going to be outliers. So every application has to address 100% of the VSLs in that location, whether they're going to be served, whether they're outliers, or whether they're going to be excluded. But to emphasize, your application will be for the entire project area. You'll just have to identify what's excluded and outliers. While we're waiting for other questions, I just wanted to say if you are submitting applications for project areas that are next to or adjacent to another project area, please make sure that you understand that the applications will be scored and awarded separate from one another. You can identify in your narrative that you intend to serve both locations, the project area A and project area B, because you already have infrastructure there, or that's how you wanted to build. There's no guarantee that you'll get both. Just make sure that you make us aware that there are adjacent areas that you have submitted an application for as well. Thank you, Brandon. One of our teammates has posted in the chat the link to our frequently asked questions. Most of these answers can be found there, but again, we have a Tuesday and Thursday office hours. Feel free to do that. How do we view the locations within each project area? Go to the interactive map on our website. If you click on the location, it will show you the county, the number of VSLs associated with that particular project area. So if you're proposing to apply to 10 application areas, applicant would submit 10 applications, all applicable applicable docs for each application. That's correct. Every project area is separate from another. For costs that are submitted to outlier locations, are those costs subject to negotiations? For example, those costs may change based on provisionally awarded projects. Yes. So when we get to the negotiation phase, again, if there are leftover locations that there has been no applications for, we will first contact those folks that have identified them as being interested in them, and then we'll negotiate the cost associated with those locations based on our models and what your cost estimates are. And Melissa has posted a link to our interactive project area map in the chat. Or there's specific locations selected. For example, some locations within our area are city-owned locations that we serve ourselves. So the maps were created based on the cost quest data that was provided to the FCC, which located every serviceable location in the state. That map was further honed by locations that are served in the state by any provider at a certain speed, 100/20 in this particular instance, and then further honed down by the federal awards, RDOF, Enhanced ACAM, and Reconnect, and then through the state grant awards. So all the locations that were identified in the Capital Projects Fund and the Broadband Opportunity Fund awards were removed from that map. So if you haven't provided the served data to the FCC, then it's not on their map and it won't be considered served. So I suggest you do some reporting to the FCC if there are locations on that map that say are unserved, but you in fact own or serve them. You can also talk to us during the technical assistance office hours, or feel free to send me an email if you'd like. I'll be happy to look at any of those locations that you're concerned about. Are the construction timelines for the outlier locations subject to the 48-month requirement? Yes, everything is subject to the 48-month requirement. To clarify, you could potentially award outliers to ISPs who didn't necessarily win the project area. So we should cost based on not winning that award area. Yeah, if that's something that you are willing to do based on the number of locations that remain, be happy to do that. It's more likely that someone that has applied for that particular project area and simply doesn't want to increase the cost per location because of those outliers, it's likely that they would want to do that. But we're not going to exclude anybody from applying for whatever they'd like to. It's just you have a better chance of providing service to an entire project area or one that has a couple of locations that are omitted or excluded than just 10 or 15. Because once you submit an application, it must address 100% of the locations within that project area. During negotiations, we'll go out and look for anybody that wants to serve any of the areas that are left over, given priority to those that have already addressed an interest. Does being a locally minority owned ISP get bonus points? No, the scoring was pretty well set up for with the policy notice, the new policy notice. Primary score is on cost per location and overall project cost to the federal government, with secondaries being speed to deployment and the speed and latency of the systems. Those are the only scoring criteria that are allowed. And that wasn't something that we decided to do here. That's something that's nationwide. Don, I think I just answered this question, but I'll read it out for you. Can you elaborate on how qualitative factors such as workforce development, partnerships, local governments, etc., are weighed within the primary and secondary scoring criteria? Specifically, can you clarify how these elements influence scoring compared to more quantifiable metrics like cost per location served or total numbers of BSL reached? So, as I just said, there's one scoring criteria for priority broadband projects, and that is cost per location. And then for secondary scoring is only speed to deployment and the upload and download speed, the speed of the system with latency. And those scoring criteria were set in the policy notice. Is it a requirement for the state to ultimately award each and every unserved and underserved location in each project area? Yes, our goal is to reach 100% service for every unserved and underserved location in compliance with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. When scoring cost per location, does location include BSLs only or BSLs and CAIs? So Florida never elected to prioritize community anchor institutions. We anticipated as we build out the system throughout the state that every community anchor institution will have access to broadband at speeds of 100/20. So CAIs were not prioritized by the state, so it's by BSL, regardless of whether it's a CAI, a residence, or a business. I'll give it another minute or two. If there's any other questions, please get them in the chat now. If not, a couple of minutes, we'll call it a day. All right, having seen no additional questions, I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Again, join us for our technical assistance office hours on Tuesdays or Thursdays. Email me if you've got a specific question. I'd be happy to answer those. Give me a call. I'll be happy to have a discussion with you. Thanks to Madison and Melissa for joining us today and doing that presentation. And everybody have a great day. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.